Okay, it's Toby from Heavyweight MMA here today with one of Australia's pioneer no-holds-barred and MMA fighters, unretired UFC veteran, black belt in BJJ, Muay Thai instructor, fight analyst, and owner, chief instructor at King's Academy in Moorebank, the king of rock and rumble, Mr. Elvis Sinosic. Thank you very much for giving us the time. Exactly, good to be the
always
king.
A pleasure. Always a pleasure, Toby. Always happy to chat MMA and what's going on.
Great. Hey, you just mentioned that you're looking at opening another gym along with King's Academy that you already run in Moorebank. Do you want to talk about that for a minute?
Sure. So as you know, I run King's Academy, been running it in one form or another since about 2002. So 19 years, been teaching over 20 years. Being the first Australian in the UFC, Australian MMA and UFC Pioneer, I probably have the longest running relationship with the UFC in Australia. So, you know, it's a pretty cool achievement. So when the UFC partnered up with an outside company to set up UFC gyms, I knew it was something I wanted to be involved in. It kind of made sense with my history and everything. So I was actually one of the first people to sign on as a franchisee with the UFC gym program. But I wasn't ready to jump into just any location. So I've spent the last couple of years looking at different places. There were certain requirements that I kind of needed, obviously, with my experience running, you know, King's Academy and SPMA before this. I already knew what I was looking for. So finally, an opportunity came up. A spot opened up in Campbelltown inside a shopping centre inside MacArthur Square. And it just seemed like the perfect opportunity to bring the UFC, but the UFC style of training, you know, the jiu-jitsu, the kickboxing, the wrestling, to the everyday person. Because obviously, you know, everyone knows what we do and who I am within our community, but the general population probably still a little bit unsure of what we do, a little bit skeptical about what's going on. And the UFC gym is a great way to introduce people to the benefits of the training, because as we know, you know, MMA fighters are some of the fittest, most versatile athletes on the planet. You know, they're extremely capable, training, usually competing in multiple sports, in boxing and wrestling and jiu-jitsu, as well as the mixed martial arts. And that just develops a really great base for general health and well-being. So if we can take a lot of those principles, similar to what we do here at King's Academy, and introduce it to more people. So obviously, I love King's. King's is my is my baby, and I'm always going to put most of my time into this. But it's mostly people who know what they're looking for. They're looking for jiu-jitsu, they're looking for Muay Thai. They kind of know what they want coming to us, and you know, it makes sense. You know, we're probably the most recognized brand in Sydney. You know, we have the largest location and mix of classes, but UFC gym offers that to everyone. Even though we offer it to everyone, I think it has a much broader reach. Obviously, it's a much more accessible location, being inside a shopping center, so more people are going to see it. And hopefully we can introduce, you know, this lifestyle to more people, which will also help the sport of, you know, UFC, because obviously not everyone is going to want to be interested in it. They'll come in, they'll discover the training, but there'll always be a small percentage who'll discover that training, want to take it further, and will actually also get interested in sport. So bringing more fans and viewers to the sport means there's more opportunity for fighters to come up, creates more opportunities for fighters to make money, because as the fan base grows, the sport grows. I mean, the UFC recently was floated as a public company, so you know, it's up and up and up.
Yep. It's amazing the progression that it's gone through, that, and now people like you that are putting all the parts of MMA together. When 30 odd years ago yourself was training across 5 different places so you could get those particular skill sets, and then step by step some gyms came up that combined it for the fighters pretty much. And now that it's grown even further, that it can be the general public, can be your mums and dads and kids, etc., that are learning the fundamentals of mixed martial arts, which was before, like you said, it was just part of the fight community, and people that really wanted to fight had to make the effort and travel around like yourself. And now it's accessible to everyone. Quite amazing.
Yeah, it is. As you mentioned, back when I was training myself, it was trial and error. We really didn't know what we were doing. And I'm being honest about, I mean, we knew how to do strength training. We knew how to do conditioning. We knew how to do wrestling. We knew how to do jiu-jitsu, but we didn't understand how it all fitted together. And, that's kind of evolved over that time. We're out there testing this, trying that. Functional training really kind of developed and really took off through mixed martial arts. Like, there was some functional training, but not a lot of people knew about it, but it made a lot of sense to the mixed martial artists because, we're being explosive, we're using endurance, we're using strength, we're using flexibility, we're using reaction speed. So all the different facets of conditioning we're using in a single match. When you're throwing a javelin or kicking a ball, there's just, you kind of get focused in a particular area of physical demand, whereas in mixed martial arts, you've got to kind of do them all. So, we developed that functional training, the monster training, tire flipping and kettlebells. And the pioneers such as Chuck, who started wall walking, climbing up the cage. And then we had people using the cage to take people down and pin them down. And now, not only was it the merging of the skills, it's the merging of the environment, the merging of the physical training. And now it's become its own beast, it's its own entity. We've taken all those things, but even still, every day we're always looking at different ways to improve and maximize our effort.
Yep. And just saying, now that you've got to that stage where everything's combined, in the early days, could you just go through some of the different styles that you've gone through? I know you originally said you started as a youngster doing judo, some taekwondo, and then later on being inspired by some of the no holds barred type fighting, etc., that you started to do a lot of different sort of arts. What sort of different arts did you combine in the beginning? Did you try to piece together?
So as you mentioned, I started with judo. What kind of kicked it off was Bruce Lee. Like, as a kid back in the 70s, 80s, I was a big fan of Bruce Lee. Used to watch his VHS tapes, which people, the kids of today would have no idea, sticking your tape in and watching the movies. I was inspired by Bruce. I started with judo, and it was kind of funny. I kind of sucked at the throwing part, but I was a bit of a natural at the grappling. The Nawaza. All I wanted to do when I used to go to training was Nawaza. But deep down, because I'd watched Bruce Lee, I wanted to do striking. So I was looking for a kung fu school because Bruce Lee did couldn't find one nearby, and then I saw an ad for a taekwondo school, and it was listed as Korean kung fu or something like that. I went, that's what I want to do. So I got into the taekwondo, and I did that for years as well. And then years later, I went to university, got a job, and then when I got my first job, I caught up with an old friend who I'd been to with high school, and he actually introduced me to UFC. VHS tape of this skinny little Brazilian guy choking out all these big steroid guys. I'm like, oh, this is really cool. And so I'm like, because I'd kind of stopped my martial arts training during my university. I actually got into beach volleyball and a few other sports. But, I kind of always missed the martial arts. So this kind of inspired me to start training. So I opened up the yellow pages, started flipping through the book, and I found a school. It was a Jun Fan school. And so, for those of you that know Bruce Lee, that was Bruce Lee's style. Jun Fan was pre-Jeet Kune Do sort of thing. It kind of Jun Fan evolved into Jeet Kune Do. And we were in the school. It was great. We did we did stick fighting, a little bit of Muay Thai, a little bit of grappling, and it really kind of captured my attention. And then reading the Blitz magazine, John Will, who's the head of Machado Australia, was traveling around the world, training in different martial arts. He went to the Philippines, trained in Salat, fought and won the Salat World Championships, went to India, wrestled in the pits of India, and then coincidentally happened to hear about this Brazilian who'd come to Australia to make a challenge, $50,000 challenge, winner takes all. So he's like, well, this sounds interesting. I'm already traveling. I should travel to Brazil and find out what this sport was about. And obviously he discovered that, started promoting it in his magazine. I read about it. And so I then moved to Sydney, discovered, first actually found a Kali school because there was no jiu-jitsu schools nearby. Then I found a jiu-jitsu school run by Anthony Lange, who eventually became my longtime coach, friend and mentor. And then, started training there during that time. I continued to do I looked into kickboxing, I did boxing, I did wrestling, I did capoeira for a little while, trying all the different kind of elements of trying to find what was best. In the end, I ended up pretty much refining it down to the jiu-jitsu, the wrestling, the Muay Thai, and then some occasional boxing just to sharpen up my hands. And so when I eventually opened up our place, we wanted to be able to provide everything that I needed to go everywhere else to, all in one place. And even over the last couple of years, I've actually taken it to the next level, because not only do we have Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, boxing, wrestling, and MMA here, obviously we now also have hot yoga as part of our recovery. We have a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. We have a sauna. We do ice baths. We have a strength and conditioning room. So I've kind of even taken it further. Not only do I want to provide all the training in one place, I also want to be able to provide all the recovery options, because that's one of the things I really lacked during my career. I really didn't understand the value of recovery, and it's something I've really delved in now as an older athlete. I'm still going overseas to the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu World No-Gi Championships, the Masters World Championships, things like that, and I want to keep competing. Just turned 50 and I don't want to stop, or I just want to keep pushing forward. So it's made me realize how important recovery is in conjunction with quality training.
Yep, great. Just thinking of all those styles that you've studied, I have a simple question for you, which is kind of the premise that UFC started from in the beginning. In your mind, if you took each one of those styles that you've touched on and you had one, like people that were equally physically gifted, equally mentally gifted, they all trained that one art only, who would be the winner in a fight between all those styles? What would you say was the ultimate out of those ones that you've studied? I know you support MMA. This is your thing, which is combining them. But back in that old way of thinking where everything's separate, what would you say is the king?
It's already been determined. It's like the UFC's kind of pretty much proved it in the early days when it was style versus style. Each of the sports have the ability to win matches and stuff. But if you're not doing any cross-training, if you're not actually knowing what the opposition doing, you're going in blinders only, knowing what you know, jiu-jitsu wins. It's already been proven. The Gracies did it in the streets of Brazil, and then they took that to the US, and then they went into the UFC, and then Hickson went over to Shudo, and then Pride. In the early days, it was the jiu-jitsu guys who won. It wasn't the wrestlers, the kickboxers, the boxers, the karate people didn't start winning until they understood what the others were doing, and then they added to their game. Now, it is much more a balanced approach. You need to have a grappling, a wrestling, a striking balance. Now, you don't have to be an expert in all of them. You just have to understand what the threats are in each area, and then choose one area to particularly specialize in. So if you want to choke people out, your focus needs to be on jiu-jitsu and how to win when you hit the ground. But you need to know how to do wrestling to get people to the ground. You need to know striking so you're not getting knocked out when you're shooting in. Same if you want to be a striker, if you want to knock people out, you need to have a good understanding of how to defend a takedown when someone shoots at you. If you end up on your back, you need to know how to not get submitted while you get to the cage, post, and stand back up so you can knock your opponent out. So nowadays, it really is about being diverse, understanding the disciplines, not necessarily being an expert in the disciplines. But back in the day, blinders on, you don't know anything about anyone else. You're just going in with your skill set. The jiu-jitsu guys win. It's 99 times out of 100 they're going to win. Obviously, there's always that you get caught going in or something like that happens. But from what we've seen in history, it was probably the most effective martial art in that style in the arena. Now, again, I'm not going to say that it's necessarily the same for self-defense. I think it'll be very close to self-defense. But I think in a self-defense situation where you have walls and chairs and different things, it's going to adjust a little bit. And, maybe they're going to be 60 or 70% dominant. Whereas in the cage, the ring, with the blinders on, they're going to pretty much win most of the matches.
And Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, do you class that as a traditional martial arts in the sense?
Yes and no. Like, obviously, it has a traditional history. I respect our tradition. I respect where the sport has come from. But one of the things that really drew me and that I love about Jiu-Jitsu is that it's always evolving. I'm not one of the gyms that goes, this is how I was taught, this is how we're going to do it, we're not going to change. I'm always evolving. I was one of the first guys to use leg locks in the sport. I was in the first ever ADCC in 1998. I won with the first ever heel hook submission in ADCC World Championship competition. I already saw the value from other styles, such as, back then it was Sambo for the leg locks, judo for controls, wrestling for the takedowns. I already could see that other styles of grappling had lots of value that we could import into the style. So, we're always evolving. We have, obviously, students looking at different things. We have the guys in the gi who are doing their berimbolos, their lapel gis, rolling upside down, wrapping people up. Then I have my guys who are doing the no-gi, focusing on leg submissions into the ashies, straight ashi, cross ashi, inverting, attacking the legs, and then when they defend, going for the neck and the back and all that sort of stuff. So I'm always happy to continue to build and learn from what's going out there. As I said, I still go out and I try and compete at the Masters World Championships every year. I have students, pre-COVID, who are going over to the World Championships and competing. We were looking at the footage of what everyone was doing back in the day. But I also keep in mind, when you look at guys like Roger Gracie, that the fundamentals still always work. I don't want to let go of the fundamentals. Teaching and ensuring we have all our fundamentals in place doesn't go astray. I don't put that to the side. I always build off the fundamentals. But when we get to the higher levels, I like to diversify. I like to look what's going out. And as I said, I'm always growing. I'm always adding more. I don't get mired too much in tradition, because I think a lot of martial arts have fallen behind in effectiveness because they get caught up into tradition. It's like katas were designed to pass the knowledge on, because back in the day, most of the people either couldn't read, and we definitely didn't have videos and YouTube and DVDs. So there was no way to pass knowledge on. So the way you pass the knowledge on is you put it in a structured form. You did your movements in a particular way. And so katas were designed to pass on knowledge, to help teach it, not to be how to implement it. So you passed on the knowledge, and then from there, you then applied it in your training, in your one-on-one training and things like that. Whereas a lot of places get so mired in thinking that they need that to be effective, when it's only a method to share knowledge. So, we have our grading syllabus. I'm always updating it as things change, as the sport evolves, as I learn more. I don't get stuck in that, the all white gis. I'm probably one of one of my students said I'm one of the most well-dressed instructors. I've got like camo gis. I've got Dragon Ball Z, orange and blue gis. I've got a red grading gi. I've got denim gis. I've got gray gis, black gis, yellow gis. And I like to provide that for my members. I like to make it interesting. I like to, again, I love training. It's fun. I don't want to make it so strict and this is the only way to do it. As I explained to my students, there's not a right and a wrong way. There's a way that works and there's a way that doesn't work. If you do something different to the way I teach it, but it works, it's not wrong. Have a look at what the limitations are, know what the risks are, but if it's working, it's working. As long as you're aware of what's going on. And that's the way I like to look at my jiu-jitsu, the way I look, same with my boxing. And obviously, there is a certain way to punch so you don't injure yourself, but as we've seen with footwork, with some of the guys in the UFC, there are so many different styles of footwork, and one isn't right or wrong. They're all different, and they're all individually applied to the person. So, you know, martial arts is about the technical application of your physical abilities.
Yeah. And just touching back on the traditional sort of side, I asked the question about the tradition of jiu-jitsu. Some of the old martial arts that you've been a big part of carry more tradition or more holistic approach than just about fighting and competing, etc. Is that something that's carried on through jiu-jitsu or through your gym, that there are certain, I don't know, behaviors or balance in the way you teach, or that extends itself beyond just learning how to fight or learning how to, you know, do some combat?
No, absolutely. Like, as I said, you know, all the martial arts have something to offer. They have things of value and ways to apply it. And I don't discount any of it. And I definitely take a lot of my tradition of how I learned my martial arts. And interestingly enough, I also take a lot of what I learned in my education. Like I did IT. I've got a computer science degree, as well as my sports coaching diploma and things like that. But I take that structured knowledge and the way I put things together, and I apply it to my martial arts and to my business. We take the respect from the traditional martial arts. We still bow in. We always thank our training partners. We show respect to our senior members. You know, so yeah, we still do all those things. We show respect to the mat. We bow to our training partners. Obviously, with jiu-jitsu, you know, we slap and fist bump, but it's the concept of, you know, thanking your partner, inviting your partner to train. We just do it differently. It's not always just bowing. There are different ways to do it, but we definitely incorporate all that into our training. Particularly, you know, the kids program, a lot of parents send their kids here because they want to, you know, improve their discipline. And, you know, obviously they want their kids to be able to defend themselves. And, you know, some of them want to be future UFC champions, but the majority of them just want to improve their children's lives. So building respect and discipline and culture. So the way I kind of look at it is, I don't look at it as tradition. I look at it as culture. We build a positive culture within the gym where everyone is here to look after each other. As I always say, mixed martial arts or combat sports are an individual sport that is built off the shoulders of your training partners. Without them, you cannot climb to the levels of success that you would like.
Yeah. So like you said, you're building a culture, and would I be right in saying you'd have certain sort of codes that would just be naturally present in the gym, that anyone that really is not, you know, not doing the right thing, it'll get weeded out and addressed by you guys as seniors or by even the other members in the gym?
Oh, absolutely. As I explained, we just actually implemented a new hygiene protocol, something simple. One of my coaches, Brian Ebersol, also a UFC fighter who works here at King's, you know, been to Thailand, and in Thailand they use buckets where you dip your feet in disinfectant before you jump on the mat. So we kind of took that idea. We got some trays laid down with some disinfected mats. So you have one mat where you step on, disinfect your feet, the second mat you dry it, and then you step on the mat. Because we had a lot of people coming in, because we're getting a lot, as we're becoming more well-known, and as I mentioned earlier, probably the most well-known gym in Sydney, New South Wales, possibly Australia, you know, having been on Fox Sports and TV, and obviously the success we've had here, we're getting lots of new people who don't understand, you know, the culture, don't understand the hygiene requirements. You know, without realizing what they're doing, they're going into the change room with bare feet and then walking onto the mat. So we wanted to find a way to kind of minimize that risk. You know, we go to a lot of trouble. We probably have one of the cleanest mats around. We have multiple cleaning cycles that we go through. We get external cleaners coming in, as well as having our own staff regularly cleaning, making sure that we have as little, you know, time off due to infection or sickness. Because as you're aware, you know, we're a contact sport. We're constantly in contact with each other when we're training, whether it's jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, or boxing. We're always working with a partner. So we want to ensure, obviously we make sure everyone's is healthy and well when they step on the mat, but we want to make sure the environment itself is also conducive to being healthy. So we added that. And as I explained to the students, this down to the bottom, because the top guy, what needs to be done, and then the guys below will follow and copy those who are there ahead of them. And again, it's the same thing I introduce here. It's the same thing I want to introduce into the UFC gym. We build a good culture, we create a great environment, and it makes people want to come to training. It no longer becomes a chore. They look forward to coming here. One of the things I've gone to a lot of trouble in doing is having members areas. A lot of places will have the students come in, they train, and as soon as they're trained, they're trying to get them out so the next group can come in. We have a members area upstairs with a mat where the members can drill or roll outside of class times. We've got a big screen TV which shows all the mats so you can watch training from up there. We've got a video arcade so you can sit down and relax and play games. We have an outdoor area which I'm sitting in at the moment, which has our cage and ring, but over here we've got chairs and tables. So during summer, parents can sit out here while their kids do classes. While the parents are doing classes, kids will generally be upstairs, either on the mats or on the video game or on their iPad or doing whatever. So we want to really create, a real community culture, not just on the mat, but off the mat as well, where our members will look after the kids. If they see kids up there, they'll look after them, make sure they're doing the right thing. If the kids need help, them helping them out. So it just creates a really good, positive atmosphere.
Yep, sounds amazing. Jumping back to competition, you mentioned that I know already you fought in UFC. You mentioned ADCC. I know you've also fought in cage combat in the beginning, and also you fought in a big K1 MMA event before in Japan. What other sort of competitions have you been involved in over the years?
I mean, obviously, back in the day, I used to do judo competitions when I started judo, and then I used to do what was called the National All Styles, which was your basic like karate competitions, but it was all the traditional martial arts. So karate, kung fu, taekwondo, all kind of came together. They had what was called a point fighting division. They had a continuous fighting, which was kind of like semi-contact fighting. So I was state champion, black belt state champion back in the day when I first started getting back into martial arts and discovered the jiu-jitsu. I wanted to get into a little bit of competition, so I did those sort of competitions. Obviously, I've competed in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, state, local, national. I'm a national championship, bronze medal at the Masters gi and no gi world championships. I've competed, as you said, UFC, cage combat, pancras, rings. Can't remember the name of the promotion in Sweden. Obviously, I've competed all over the world. Numerous types of events. I've competed as wrestling. I was a state wrestling champion at one point. I've competed in grappling, like submission grappling events, obviously the same as the ADCC, non-ADCC style. Look, when I was coming up, in the sport, I really valued competition. I went out there, I tried to compete in as many competitions and as many different styles of competition as I could, because I knew, winning or losing, I was always learning something valuable. I always wanted to push myself. And it was only through pushing myself that, I knew that I could get better. And so even though I don't push my students to compete, I always recommend they do, because I see there is so much value behind competition, and it's actually losing that pushes you further than winning does. Winning, you've done everything right. You won't necessarily go back and review where the mistakes were, but when you lose, you're going to go back, you're going to have a look at what the mistakes were, and you're going to want to fix those up and get better so you don't do them next time. I think competition is important. I tell my students, and as I said, I've just recently turned 50. I still want to keep competing. I've been competing at the no-gi world championships, the Masters Jiu-Jitsu world championships, and I plan to keep competing over the years coming, as long as our international travel opens up, I'll be back out there trying to claim my medals.
That's great. And when you think of, or when I think of the old sort of masters of martial arts, back to that tradition, the true masters back then were testing themselves, testing their style against people in competition. That was the goal, to make sure that their style was winning in fights back in the ancient sort of styles. And you mentioned now the importance of competition. Obviously, it's been a big part of you. And you fought some of the big names of combat sports, especially UFC, and Tito Ortiz, Evan Tanner, Renato Sobral, Forrest Griffin, Alessio Sakara, Michael Bisping, massive names. And I can't even imagine going out to face someone like Tito Ortiz in his time. When you faced him, was a big name, was a big powerhouse, a beast. How did that feel to be going, of getting the call in the 4 a.m. in the morning? I think you mentioned to fight Tito Ortiz, and then going over to another country and fighting one of the best in the world at the time in front of a massive crowd in non-home territory. How did that feel?
Oh, look, it was awe-inspiring. Obviously, back in the day, it really was just about challenging myself. I did it because of the love of the challenge. I was not an aggressive person. I never used to get into fights outside of competition. I'd been in a few scuffles at school, nothing serious. Once I got into more training, I was a security guard. But even then, most of the time, I was able to talk my way out, because I've always said one of my most important tools was my brain. And, I was able to avoid most of the situations. What got me into stepping into the cage was a personal test. First of all, I wanted to know whether what I was actually learning would work. And second of all, that I actually had the courage to step up and fight, and that I wouldn't fall over and cry like a little girl as soon as someone, took a swing at me or something like that. It was a real personal challenge. And because the sport was so unknown, there was no money in it, you were literally doing it for your own personal goals. And as I said, mine was the challenge. And because I was so far away from the rest of the world, it was very difficult to get fights. So every time a fight opportunity came up, it was always going to be a big name. So, when I fought here in Australia, it had Mario Sperry on the card, Chris Hazeman, Matt Rocker, who I faced, actually had Frank Shamrock in his corner, who I would actually end up fighting about a year later in K1. So yeah, it was just opportunity after opportunity kind of fell in front of me, because fighters were pulling out. They were contacting me because they were having difficulty filling spots at the last second, and I was just willing to jump in on 10 days, 2 weeks notice, just jump in, give it a go. The good thing about it was it never really gave me time to really think about what I was doing, like how, was it the smart thing to do? Was it foolish or not? I just went in there. I just wanted to challenge myself. I wanted to see how good I could be. What was I capable of? And as you mentioned, the Tito Ortiz, it's quite funny, that one, because I got, I fought in UCC, which later on became TKO, which is where Georges St. Pierre came out of in Montreal, Canada. I fought against Dave Beneteau, who was a UFC veteran. I kind of got screwed. I should have won the match, but I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it ended up being a draw. So, I got that experience. And then from that, prior to that, I'd fought Tamura in rings. I lost that match, got the match in the UCC. Frank Shamrock's promoter was Scott Coker, was looking for a match for Frank Shamrock in K1. They were actually trying to get Yuki Kondo or Kiyoshi Tamura, who I'd fought, one of the big name Japanese fighters, to face him in K1. And so they had a couple of bites, but then I think those organizations kind of dragged him on because they weren't going to fight in K1, because obviously they were rival organizations at the time. And then at the last second, they all pulled out. And so he contacted me earlier if I was interested. I said yes, but then I didn't hear anything. And then a week before the fight, they called me up and said, look, we don't have an opponent for Frank. You willing to step in? I went, oh yeah, absolutely. So I fought him, went the distance, lost the decision. Frank, obviously, prior to that, had come out of the UFC, beating Jeremy Horn. Jeremy Horn was fighting for a number 1 contender spot. His opponent got injured last minute, about 2 weeks or 10 days before the match. UFC calls me up. Look, need an opponent for Jeremy. No one wants to fight him. He's a really good fighter, but he didn't have the reputation, because he was known as Gumby and that sort of thing. Even though he's one of the best guys in the planet, he just didn't get people were afraid to fight him because they felt that there was a good chance they'll lose. And if they beat him, they didn't feel they were going to get the recognition they deserve for beating someone of his talent. I just went, you know what? I'll take any challenge. I stepped in, ended up beating Jeremy. During that event, Tito was fighting Evan Tanner. And so obviously I was cage side for it. And I just watched, Tito slam and knock out. He just brutalized Evan. And after the show, I was chatting with my coach, and we're like, you know what? Wow, Tito's an absolute beast. He's at the peak of his game. He's just, the baddest man on the planet at the moment. And, we really should take it slow. We want to build up, get some experience, get a couple of matches under the belt before we even think about stepping in against Tito. And then I think it was like 2 weeks or maybe a month later, I get a phone call, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. Joe Silva's like, look, nobody wants to face Tito at the moment. We can't get a match for him. Are you interested in facing Tito for the belt? I don't say no.
Yeah.
It's like, even though I'd had that discussion with my coach, I'm like, yep, absolutely. And then I went back to sleep, and I woke up the next morning. I'm like, oh, I had the weirdest dream. I'm fighting for the UFC Light Heavyweight World Championship. Jumped onto my computer at work, and holy shit, there's an email there from Joe Silva saying, look, we're going to book you for the fight. We need to fly you out in 2 weeks for UFC 31, so you can be in cage appearance with Tito when we announce the match, and then you'll be flown, then obviously you can finish preparing for UFC 32. And so, yeah, it just kind of all snowballed from there. But yeah, as you said, it was just interesting. And pretty much most of my career was, last minute matches with guys like Forrest or Sakara. There was a couple, Forrest, I got a bit of notice, and Bisping, I got some notice as well. But again, those were guys I was never really supposed to beat. I was always, they knew I could. They knew it was a great challenge. They knew I'd come to fight. I wouldn't try and stall it out. They knew it would be a slobber knocker of a match. And, they were both great matches. I went out there for it. Sadly, didn't win them. And, had I been smarter, I might have had a more illustrious career. But, I kind of look back. I don't regret anything because, I faced numerous more world championships than a lot of world champion fighters actually end up facing. So, didn't get a lot of the results I wanted, but very happy with my career.
So when you're leading up to a fight, or particularly probably closer to the day, do you ever doubt yourself? Do you get those negative thoughts coming in, or you're always positive and feeling that you're going to win, etc.?
Oh, look, definitely. Like in the lead up, right up to weigh-in, no problems. I'm cool. I've been very focused. I do a lot of mental conditioning, things like listening to particular songs on the way to training, and then having that song playing while I'm training. So, to get myself in a positive mindset. I used to do, back before anyone knew what float tanks or deprivation tanks were, so sensory deprivation tanks. I was in them, using them, playing subliminal tapes. I was always quite positive, but the reality is fight day nerves, they're always with you. On the day of the fight, it's not that I ever doubted myself. I was always felt confident, but I would kind of, the nerves would be so much. I used to go, why am I doing this? Why am I getting punched in the face? I'm not making enough money out of this. I'm like, why? Why am I doing this? It was more that sort of like questioning.
Yeah.
Is it worth it? But the crazy thing is, for me, as soon as that walkout music played, everything changed. And like even now, I'm getting the goosebumps. And that's what happened. my goosebumps would come up. I'd start getting excited. My energy level would build. At that point, there was no doubt. There was no, why am I doing this? There was no, what's going to happen to me? It was just, let's do this. Let's make it happen. And it was just excitement to challenge myself. And it's kind of funny because it's almost the same feeling I used to get at the weigh-ins. At the weigh-ins, I used to think, why are we waiting? Let's just do it now. Let's push the chairs aside. Let's step back. Let's just go now. Let's get over and done with. It probably would have been better for me because unlike a lot of the guys, I wasn't cutting weight for my fight. So I think I would have had a much better success rate if we fought at the weigh-ins rather than the night after. But it is what it is, you know. But yeah, it's always an interesting journey. I don't believe anyone who says that they don't have some sort of doubt or nerves or something. Like I believe Tito used to throw up behind the curtain before he walked out. I've seen other fighters literally pull over a big throw up and then walk out because of the nerves. Again, it's not anything to do with fear. It doesn't mean they're lacking. It just means there's a lot of nerves and everyone kind of deals with it in a different way.
Just thinking about what it takes to be a fighter. And I know on one hand, you have some people involved in the sport, in combat sports that maybe they've got a lot of angst and anger inside, and that's a channel for them. Guys like yourself and some of the other people that I've talked to previously and that I've known don't strike me as that sort of people. They strike me as, like you mentioned, people that want to test themselves and feel value in training and competing. And then the other common thread I find is that obsessive compulsive thread or drive and motivation just to keep training and keep chasing that goal. Can you talk on that a bit? Because I know to do what you did, even in the beginning of training at 5 different gyms, working 2 jobs, all these things, it takes a lot of, it takes a certain type of person to have that sort of obsession to chase, I guess, a dream and keep working towards it.
Yeah, look, absolutely. I think the three is, I call it the 3 Ds: desire, determination, and dedication. You've got to want it. You've got to be determined to do it, and you've got to be willing to do what it takes to succeed. You know, without those 3 Ds, you're not going to succeed. I think they're the people that do well. People with just angst and anger will do well at times, but not necessarily long term, because they're not always doing what they need to do to really improve and add to their skills and fix holes or problems that kind of come up there. You mentioned obsessive compulsive. I'm absolutely obsessive compulsive. I'm the sort of person that does the same. I get up every morning, do exactly the same thing. I take my supplements at the same time. I do this. I follow every steps. When at one stage I was overweight and I was, tracking my post-surgery. And so I had a MyFitnessPal and I put in 2,000 days continuous without missing a single day of my meals every single day. I do things as a routine. I actually tell my guys, routine is the structure of success. If you can build routine, you can do anything. And you have to make routine part of your life to be able to really succeed at this sport, because you're going to be doing stuff. You're going to be waking up in the morning, going to bed late at night, getting punched in the face. You're going to be tired. You're going to be run down. And if you're haven't got some sort of structure to ensure you're there every day doing it, you're not going to succeed. If you don't, you either need to have someone there pushing you, or you need to have some routine or structure in place where you don't even think about it. You just get up and do it. And that's what kind of carried me through. But saying that, there also needs to be a certain element of the fighter within you. This was something that I know I had, is as much as it's totally about challenging myself, it's about being better, it's about improving, it's about pushing myself. When I got punched in the face, it pushed me. Like, it wasn't quite anger, but obviously it is some sort of anger, but it's like, as soon as I got hit, that's it. It's like I took it up another level. I pushed myself harder. if I got hurt, it didn't make me want to back down. It made me want to push forward harder. And there's a certain something in people that I call, you see it in fighters versus athletes. You can be an amazing athlete, but you need that fighter spirit. And it's that fighter spirit. It's a combat sport. If the idea of getting punched in the face, ending up with a broken arm, getting your leg ripped off or something like that worries you, this is not the sport for you. None of those concerns ever. Did I want it to happen? Don't get me wrong. No, I didn't want to get punched in the face. I didn't want to get my arm broken. I didn't want to get knocked out, but it didn't worry me. Every time I got hit, it was like, take me up another level. Every time someone tried to submit me, it made me want to get out and submit them back. So you still need a certain amount of that. You need to be the athlete. You need to be dedicated. You need desire, determination, dedication. You need all that in place, but you need that pinch of fighter inside you, that fighter spirit to really succeed in this sport. And you see it in all the top guys. As soon as they lose, they go back to the gym and they train harder than they did before. And that's what I call the fighter spirit. And they're the guys that will always continue to succeed.
And I'm a strong believer in something you mentioned in another interview about training, etc., can then transfer into other things in daily life or other success stories or other things goals that you're trying to achieve. I think if you've done like yourself, trained day in, day out, fronted killers in front of millions of people, etc., I think that's some of the other thing that lends itself to be successful in other areas of life. If you can drive through that, you can pretty much drive through anything, right?
Oh, absolutely. Again, I tell people it's the tenets I learned from the martial arts, from training, respect, courtesy, dedication, that fighting spirit. As you said, when you've got someone across the cage who's trying to rip your head off, trying to negotiate alone isn't that, crazy, everything I've achieved through competition, I've applied to my personal and business life. I have a beautiful house, a partner, a son. I have, a super successful gym. I'm opening up another gym. I'm doing literally $1 million deals, it's terrifying. Like I'm going under so much finance, and you know what? It's financial stress. It really isn't that bad as having someone on top of you trying to elbow your head through the canvas. Is it stressful? Absolutely. But if I know if I can survive inside the cage, I can survive anywhere. And it's what's allowed me to continue to be successful, not being afraid to accept challenges. If I was concerned about that, when I had my smaller gym, it was packed out every day, making more than enough money to succeed. I didn't need to get any bigger. You know what? I wanted to bring this to more people. I wanted to help more people. I wanted to create more opportunities. So, I dive in. I opened up, one of the first full-time mixed martial arts centers, super gyms that has everything, training and conditioning and recovery all in one place. It was scary, but it succeeded and I did it. And then I took that confidence and then I'm now putting it into building my UFC gym and then creating my legacy and creating a future for my son and helping all the people, more and more people I get to help every day because now I'm exposed to more and more people. So absolutely everything that I've done in my career, and it's all thanks to my martial arts. It's the martial arts training which gave me the platform to be able to compete and to be able to challenge myself, and that's those facing that adversity that I can now take with the tenets I've built in the martial arts to be successful in life in general.
Sounds like it's good to be King, Elvis.
It's good to be the king.
I just want to, on one last note, I just wanted to discuss on your King's Academy of Martial Arts Facebook page, you have one statement, which I think sounds good. It kind of sums up some of the things you were just saying. We do what others won't so we can achieve what others can't. I think that kind of blends in with what we're talking about pushing hard, like you said, discipline, desire, etc. to get what you want. Any comments on that?
Yeah, no, look, absolutely. I wanted a motto for the gym that really expressed what my career was about. Back in the day, I was doing whatever it took to be successful. I was running on the beach, running sand dunes. I was going to the gym. I was doing all sorts of training in every single martial art. I literally had 2 memberships for jiu-jitsu because I did shift work. So I had to do morning classes and evening classes. No one place had both. 2 memberships for my wrestling, 2 memberships for my kickboxing, and all this sort of stuff. It just, again, if you're not willing to do those sort of things, you're not going to succeed. And I've kind of also taken the Machado motto, which is leave your ego at the door. And, we still fully embody that as well. But yeah, that other one is definitely what this gym is about, and it's what got me to where I am today.
Yep. Great. So just before I go, I just wanted to say one last thing. Firstly, thank you for what you've done with Australian MMA, paving the way for some of our current guys, Robert Whittaker, Alex Volkanovski, etc., all our other international fighters. So thank you so much for that, and for creating such a great gym at King's and in the future UFC as well. And lastly, thank you for your time today, Mr. Elvis Sinosic.
Thanks, Toby. It's been an absolute pleasure. As I said, I love talking MMA, martial arts, and all that sort of stuff. The biggest problem is shutting me up, honestly. As you hear, I can really get carried away. And it's because I'm passionate about what I do. I'm passionate about the gym. I'm passionate about the UFC. I'm passionate about helping people. And it's because of that. And hopefully that comes across to the viewers. And I really want to thank you for the opportunity to be able to share that passion with, people who may not know a lot about me and what I've done and what I kind of represent. I do this because I love doing it and because I love helping people. So hopefully it inspires some other people to get into martial arts, to get into training. If you're in the Sydney, Liverpool area, make sure you drop in and visit King's. If not, go out, find your local gym, go have a talk to the coaches, instructors, get into training, change your life for the better. I really think it can make a big difference. And thank you for what you're doing. If you're not doing things like this, people like me wouldn't be able to have a platform to try and share our message to everyone else. And I always got to finish off with, it's good to be the king.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.